Hi. Hi, and welcome to my podcast, Discourses. This week we have a very delightful guest, David O'Sullivan. David is a fourth year human genetics student. He's the captain of the Trinity Archery team and also happens to be a little archer. We've gone for competitions together, placed wages and shoots, and had lengthy discussions on how barebow is the best shooting style ever. He also happens to have a taste for concerts. More on that later. So, to describe him, I'd say he's a talker. Well, the interesting kind. So, welcome to this show. To this episode, David. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
To start off, tell me about what you've been up to lately. It's been a while since I last saw you.
Oh, I've spent the last 4 or 5 months now. Either if I'm not shooting, I'm working, and if I'm not working, I'm in college. So it's been hectic, non-stop the last, I'd say, 7 months. It's been pretty busy, but I'm loving it at home. It's got a lot of fun. It's been a while since I've seen you, so a lot to talk about.
Yeah, true that. I've been in the shadows doing stuff. Primarily, I was more or less focused on how to get this podcast up and running and so on.
Yeah.
So it's all work, play. It kind of seems like you're hitting the balance somehow. Work,
it's a good balance. Yeah, I'm college is running in the background while I earn money to spend more money on archery equipment, and then I shoot that archery equipment, and it's just a kind of a vicious circle of going back to work to buy more stuff.
Have you got more stuff lately?
Bits and pieces, yeah. Nothing too dramatic. I can't say I'm walking around with an Olympian's bow now at the moment, but it's I've made a few more modifications. But,
yeah. How about the archery club? Like, I've been following you guys on Instagram lately, and over the past few months, there you guys seems to do a lot. You've been doing a lot, and I was thinking, like, what's the highlight of the semester so far?
The highlight has actually just been the new beginners we've gotten in. I know that's very cliche of a captain to say is, oh yeah, no, I'm fighting the new people, but
I kind of feel
yeah, I'm very proud actually. The group we've got in this year now, it seems they've meshed really well. They've made friends now, and they're going off and going out on their own little adventures outside of the club and meeting up for pub nights and dinners and whatever else outside of competitions, which is great to see. And then in competitions, they're really competitive against each other. We have two especially who are like neck and neck in terms of their scores, and they're just like every competition, as soon as they finish shooting, run over to the other and ask how they're getting on, if they're doing bad, if they're doing good, and then run back and start shooting again. And the crowd this year, they're a lot of fun, really nice people, and they're shooting well, which is a good thing for me as well. It means the club's doing well.
Under your captaincy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they're my little beginners now. I can claim ownership on how well they're doing this year and all the medals they've earned. So,
have you changed anything from last year, like training, that kind of stuff?
Trainings, we have a lot more of the committee like doing hands-on coaching, intermittent in between our own coaches' visits. So I feel like the trainings this year have gotten a lot better than what they were last year, with a lot more attention to how these new beginners are getting on. In terms of the actual general structure, same thing. We walk in, we shoot, we go home, we rinse and repeat 3 times a week. But I feel like there's definitely more of a buzz around the training sessions this year. We've more often than not, we're packed capacity, which is a great thing. So and a lot of them are coming to competitions. So whatever it is, the trainings are working and people will keep coming back. So it's been a lot of fun teaching them all. So
fair play to you guys. I'm so happy that it's been so better this time around compared to the last.
Oh, we're delighted now as well. So
how about you individually? Like, how have you been doing in terms of archery?
Not to toot my own horn, but I've been doing pretty well. Yeah. 4 competitions now we've done, and all 4 of them have brought a new personal best. So we're doing okay. myself and Liam and Aoife competing in the advanced category now for the
Oh,
club, and
okay.
shooting consistently well. And while Liam's still just that little bit better than me, I'm holding my own. But I know I'm happy with my progress this year, and I feel like we've got a break now until the middle of February. So it's kind of just going to be putting the bow to the grindstone
Mhm.
and practicing. And by the time the next competition rolls around, hopefully another personal best will be on the horizon.
Yeah.
Looking
Good.
forward to continue breaking all the records that I've set.
Right. With better equipment, of course.
Exactly, yes.
So, like, what attracts you to archery? Like from the very beginning, what is that one thing?
Well, what got me in was Oscar shouting at me. That's how I started. The
You were
club was that
threatened to start with archery, is
I
it?
was threatened. I was shouted at from about 10 meters away by this old man
Uh-huh.
with a bow in his hands, and told me to sign up and give me a fiver. And lo and behold, I'm captain of the club 3.5 years later. Now I suppose it worked. Fair play to Oscar. It's he managed to rope me in, but I don't know. I think what keeps me is just the the squad you're shooting with, and then the competitiveness in between
Mhm.
members of the club. Like I've been myself and Liam, the previous captain, is shooting the same amount of time, and the two of us are neck and neck, so close. And I want to beat him. I want to keep beating him. And it's just that competitiveness of, coming to a training session and, you know, continually going to those training sessions. Next time the competition comes around, you're hoping to just smash the rest of the competitors that are going there. And, you know, sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. But that's
You're
always the
having
exciting part.
nonetheless. You're having fun nonetheless, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Now it's my sport. I love it so much. And I want to keep doing it for a long time. So
Uh-huh. For me, community aspect of it keeps me going too. Another aspect is the very nature of archery. Like you're trying to hit the mark, the target. And it's like there's a saying, something like hitting the mark, kind of like don't
yeah,
miss the mark. So it's always like training your mind to hit the mark consistently, and that I
yeah.
believe can translate to a lot of things in life.
No, it's very applicable across a lot of other things. Is your goal is to do the best, and in archery, it's very prevalent considering the best is that little small 10 ring in the center of the target. If you hit that, there's no better feeling. And I suppose it's the same as many things. You strive to just hit the nail on the head and do the best you can. But in archery, it's just personified by that little yellow square or little yellow circle.
Yeah, in life too, it's to find the target and try to like hit it as best as you can. So we're moving on to my favorite part of this episode, and that's to talk about um, what you are studying about, right? And so, like, I myself have been enamored by the very concept of genetics. Like, I've been reading about stuff, and there's this one concept about like designer babies that's like genetically modified humans. So, like, I read about genetically modified plants that we consume, and even animals. Like, there's a productivity aspect to it. Like, GMO plants are much more um, like they produce much more food, so there's less stress on the food supply chain. So I was thinking, um, where are we going with genetically modified humans? I'd like to see your take on it.
Oh well, it's a tough subject because of all the ethics surrounding it. But I think it's definitely going to happen by the end of, I'd say, this century. Is we're going to see children being produced genetically. Um, of course, there's a load of ups and downs with it, but it's all caused by there was a breakthrough about I think it was 2011, 2012, where they introduced this new gene editing technique
Mm.
called CRISPR, and basically you just could pick out a chunk of DNA, just cut a little section out of it, put whatever you wanted in there, and put it back into whatever cell or organism you're working on, and it just becomes prevalent in the model. And they've used it to do, like you said, GMO plants, GMO animals, reduce the ability of the plant to be harmed and increase the productivity. They've tried testing it on animals so far. Like there's a lot of great experiments done with ear transplants, actually, of scientists growing ears on the back of mice and rats. No detriment to the animal itself. It just has an extra organ sitting on the back, and that can be surgically removed and surgically reimplanted onto a victim of, say, burns or any other facial injuries. If someone loses their ear, they can have this reattached. Designer Babies kind of follows that track of, same concept, gene editing, targeting just sections of the baby's DNA and just picking and choosing kind of what the parents want in the kids. There's quite a lot of upsides to it. It avoids a multitude of genetic disorders that can arise completely out of nowhere during development. Some serious cases where infant mortality is so very high. If you remove the chance of that even happening in the first place, that's the basics of designer babies. And then if you eliminate that, it'd be a miracle to have a child born with no chance of becoming sick to any of these genetic disorders that are so common in the world. But then it can also go into hair, eye color, lots of different physical features just to change, just like that. And for the sake of maybe 2 hours work on one little cell, change it and put it back in and develop a human from that, and it can be modified to suit whatever tastes you have. It's crazy stuff. But then it's also got the huge overshadow of all the problems with it, of what gives us the right to, I suppose, play God with this technology and make a human artificially, nearly, where we're editing what we want, not what randomly occurs. So there's two very conflicting sides to it. Of
I agree.
Why should we?
You said, I believe that it would be reckless to have a baby with a genetic disorder. It should be corrected. If I were a doctor, I would be like, let's correct it before the baby is born. And so I was also thinking about organ transplants. So it would, in order to do a organ transplant, you should have a donor. If you're able to edit stem cells with their DNA setups and so on, you could have an infinite supply of organs.
Yeah, and that's another that's probably the area I think I'd like to specialize in is stem cell research, as there's literally infinite possibilities for those cells to do whatever we need them to do. So very recently now, I'd say this is only the last 5 years maybe of research into this, is showing that we can isolate stem cells and just use them to recreate a heart or lungs or livers in a plate. No person needed, no donor, complete match to whoever we needed. Someone's sitting on a heart transplant list for months. All we need to do is get a sample of their DNA, recode it, and produce from one single cell a heart that's perfectly matching what they already have.
Yeah, I've also heard this. Connecting to this, I've also heard this radical concept where you can take skin cells from a random human being and then re-engineer it back to the stem cell and then create a baby. And we're like, is that really possible?
It's very much so possible. Yeah. So I think the official terminology for that is induced pluripotent stem cells. So, like you said, sampling stem cell or sampling cells from some part of the body, be it cheek cells, skin cells, blood cells, bone cells, and just kind of going back through all the steps of what made it that type of cell, bringing it back to a stem cell, the you know the first ever of its kind, and building it up from there to become any sort of cell in the body, a nerve cell, a neuron. It's anything, organs in full organisms. It's crazy the possibilities and the avenues that they can go down with this kind of tech. Like I said, it's probably what I want to specialize in.
Right. We're becoming gods now. There's this game in the early 2000s called Impossible Creatures. Do you know?
I know of it, yes.
Yeah, so it's like where the protagonist in the game goes about in the forest and shoots down and collects animal DNA, and what they do essentially is combine the DNA to make impossible creatures. And that was one of my favorite games. Like there's a mix between tigers and scorpions. There's a mix between owls and leopards. So we are closer to that, I think, in the near future.
We are. It's actually bizarre, all of these very sci-fi concepts that were around 20-25 years ago, and it took one guy based in a lab in Japan, turned around to a few of his colleagues, thought, I reckon we can re-engineer these cells and bring it back to the building blocks and go from there. And I think it was Yamanaka was his name, and he was the one who introduced this pluripotent stem cell concept, and it worked, and it's been working for years, and it's been tested, and it's been used for a multitude of different disorders, not even just organ transplants, but for genetic disorders that are already prevalent, like Huntington's and Alzheimer's disease. These stem cells have been tested to try and, I suppose, replace the damaged cells that already exist. It's crazy stuff. But even like that, combining two animals together, it's no longer fiction. Like it's possible.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like we are having too much technology in a very short period of time. Like for centuries, we've been fighting each other with bow and arrow, and now we have the power of gods. Are we really equipped to like handle these now?
It's a crazy jump, but I suppose with all this advancements, and like I know it's been so quick, 20 years turnover from the discovery of stem cells to the use of them, and there's a few therapies close to being approved. But I feel like this new wave of my kind of geneticists who are being taught all of this now is armed with all this knowledge, even though it's so rapidly advancing. I think the more geneticists we have in the field, the more prep we're going to be for handling it all. And I think it can only go up, to be fair. I think it's only going to benefit people.
Okay. Also, I have another question regarding the same, like as an outsider towards like all things genetics. I'm like in the wow effect. I'm like, whoa, this sounds good. But I'm also curious about like how DNA works within our body. Like, I've heard this quite prevalent concept. It's kind of like the more you pressurize yourself, or the more you put yourself in like newer circumstances, it so happened that your body codes for new DNA. Is that really true? Like you are constantly creating yourself at the same time?
Yeah, so it's DNA replicating itself is still the most bizarre concept to me, even though it's the basic of genetics. Like it's something I've watched models of, I've studied for years, and I look at it every time and I go, wow, this is insane that this happens all the time. And I think like new DNA is created every 20-30 minutes in our body. It replaces, like every time a cell dies and a new one's made, it's your entire genome, every bit of DNA in your body is copied again, remade. And it's, yeah, like sometimes with that, your body responds to stress from in the environment, or if you've caught an illness, either be a bacteria or a virus or some sort of cold or flu, your body will re-engineer itself, even if it's just slight, and re-engineer itself in order to prevent that from happening or to cope with the stress. Like, there's cells in your bodies that kill off infection that are only produced during the infection, and like that's the same as your DNA is turning on a little bit of the code that's normally not on, or turning off a section that's normally not. For a more extreme example, I've just learned today actually, the disease sickle cell anemia. It's very prevalent in African populations, but it's not good. It's a bad disease. It causes the blood cells in your body to become a lot less efficient, but it counteracts by being highly resistant to malaria, which is why it's stayed. But I found out today that normally you need 2 copies of the sickle cell gene for it to actually take prevalence in a person. But a carrier with only 1 copy is fine. They won't exhibit any of the illness. But if that person's put into a stressful environment for long enough, it doesn't have to be like put in a torture chamber for 30 years, but high altitudes, stuff like that, low altitudes, any sort of stressful environment can cause the body to just take that 1 gene and just turn it on, even though it's supposed to have 2 of them. It can exhibit the sickle cell phenotype without having to have 2 copies, which I think is incredible. The body can be put under such stress that it would literally change its DNA to express this when it in all other circumstances shouldn't.
Right.
It's a very interesting concept. It's so interesting, just like all the different diseases. Like, it's not the only disease that does this either. There's plenty of others that shouldn't turn on unless there's 2 copies, and just a stressful environment. Some sort of, even viruses can do it. Just being sick for a little bit can just knock out the need for both copies, and 1 will take place.
Okay. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't to like bring my own example. Like, okay, let me know how this example works out. I'll give you the example. It's like, I've been going to the gym for a few months now. So before, I used to like fear pain a lot. Nowadays, it's like I have a higher tolerance towards pain. So is it related to genetics somehow?
I'm sure there's a bit to it. There's, like with everything, repeated actions, like even if it's eating certain kinds of food or anything, it's the same way. Eventually there was I can't even remember his name now, but there was a very famous Roman emperor who drank poison every day, just a little tiny bit of poison every day, and so he would have become eventually immune to poison. And he eventually did, because it just got to a point where your body just builds up a threshold for it. And I imagine it's the same as everything. Pain is the exact same. It's just your body gets a little bit more used to it every time. And just every time you are in an environment that's going to happen, the level of pain you need to accept is just going to be that little bit higher, a little bit higher every time, to actually, I suppose, fear it. It's more neuroscience, I'd say, but there's definitely a genetic thing of your body will rewrite DNA in order to produce certain effects that are going to shut off parts of, I suppose, the sensors that are going to pick up on that pain. But it's all based on DNA.
Okay, it's a bit of both then. I was thinking like some DNA from my ancestors just got turned on.
You never know. It's like, walk outside and stay in the sun for too long, and you're going to rewrite some of your ancestors' DNA. It's as simple as that. Like, everything we do changes something in our DNA every day, nearly. It's, even though it might just be the tiniest little change, but something.
Interesting stuff. I need to like sit and think about this for a while.
Yeah.
But fair play, like to you. I'd say this is a really interesting and topic, and some people don't even talk about it. At least they talk about the wow effect, but I know there's a lot of science and a lot of labs and a lot of studies involved in this, and it's hard to get your head around.
No, this is a serious amount of work being put in at the moment. Like the field of genetics today compared to 40 years ago has increased 1,000-fold. Like, it's unreal the amount of work being put in at the moment from almost every lab in the world has some sort of little genetics department either stuck in the corner, or you might have full institutes based on it. There's some great labs dedicated purely just to genetics and certain specific fields of genetics all over Germany and the Netherlands. It's on the US. It's crazy. It's an ever evolving field, but it's a very interesting time to be part of
It seems so.
Field anyway.
Yeah, wishing you the best in that regard.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries. So let's touch on concerts a bit, because I'm not a concert goer myself. Like, the last time I went to a concert was when I was in Dubai, and a Filipino friend of mine invited me to go to a Filipino concert, and yes, and it was all in Filipino, like Philippines language, and I was like there's this instance where the artists were cracking jokes, like telling jokes, and my dear friend told me the jokes, like translated it for me, and I was like laughing after the joke was over, like 2 seconds after people were looking at me. That was my experience. So let me know about yours. Like, what's the best concert you've been to?
You see, if you had asked me that question 2 weeks ago, I would have had a very different answer. But I was actually at a concert there on. I was like, I was at one there on Friday with a course mate and a very good friend of mine, Thomas, who was actually one of the original members of the Archery club back when I started. He was he kept it up for a year, so he did. So you'll often hear his name getting thrown around the club every now and again. But the two of us went to a concert for a very, very small Irish band called Modern Love. They were playing in the Button Factory in Temple Bar. Only about 500 people there. It was very small, very intimate. They're kind of a rock band, and it's so hard to describe. We walked out of that place just buzzing, running around Temple Bar, screaming all of their songs. Like, it was insane. Like, it was a really small gig, but 4 guys walked up on stage. We were standing right in front of them. Like, I could have reached out and touched the microphone. Like, it was so cool. And like, they played every song they have ever made. Like, it was that kind of concert, and it was just the best. We knew every word to every song, sang every word until we couldn't sing anymore. It was brilliant. Such a buzz as well, because everyone who was there was big fans of them. It's not like these big stadium tours where people will just go because they've heard of the artist. Like, this was a gig that it was only the die-hard fans were going to. But it was amazing. I loved it so much.
Right. Remind me of the band again. I looked that up later.
It was Modern Love. So it's Modern Love with no space. It's just all one word.
Okay.
But they're very good. Love them. Yeah. I think they'll be coming. I think they're going on tour again next year, and I'll be going to multiple of their concerts if I can. Like, It was so good.
Okay. I bet you'll see me there too.
Maybe we will. Yeah. We'll convert you. Yeah.
Yes. So I think it's a good place to end for the episode. And before we close, is there something, any movie quote or any line you want to share with us that you live by?
Oh gosh, I don't think there is. But I suppose there's, I kind of just, every time I'm stuck in a situation, I kind of think to what my coach says. And he just says, one thing at a time, and just shouts that in my ear all the time. So I think it's kind of become a personal mantra now. He's normally saying it, so he's giving out because I'm overthinking about something, but it kind of helps to, all right, Graham, sit back, think about it again, relax, and go at it. And tackle everything one thing at a time. So I suppose that's probably the best one I could go with.
Yeah, tackle one thing at a time. And even for archery, it's like the coach tells us to like improve one area before you jump onto the next kind of.
Exactly, yeah.
So, yeah. So thanks for listening. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. And special thanks to my guest, David.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And so we close with that. Until next time. Bye for now.